What's going on? It's me, Julius, aka JR Media, and welcome back to the 4K Blu-ray and DVD collection. So now we move on to part 5, which I now talk about Marvel Cinematic Universe. So like I said at the end of the previous part, basically my whole Marvel collection was so long I now have to split into 2 parts essentially. So this part here, part 5, will just all be about cinematic universe stuff. So everything, you know, all the movies as well as one TV show. And then the next part will be talking about other Marvel stuff. So like, you know, the X-Men, the Spider-Man films, like Marvel animated shows and stuff. So a lot of that stuff. So again, another thing to sort of mention, another technical issue, I'd mentioned this in the last part, is the lighting for the first couple of like Blu-rays I look at here on the shelf. Basically everything up till Thor: The Dark World. Everything may look a tiny bit, sort of a bit iffy. That's because I turned a lamp on because I thought it wasn't getting enough light. So, but that turned out to make it look very, very overexposed. So I've tried my best to do in editing to sort of reduce it a bit. So that's why it might look a bit weird, because I've had to post, like in post, just reduce the saturation and reduce really the exposure of the video. So basically, but once we get from Captain America Winter Soldier onwards into the next row, it's all completely fine. Again, I will also mention just another issue with everything up to Thor: The Dark World. There are a couple of times when the microphone is a bit muffled. That's because I was recording this right over my bed here, and basically the back frame of that is basically there. So that's why like it may sound a bit muffled basically. So, but again, that's only up to Thor: The Dark World and such. So everything past that point is completely fine. But I've already said this like 3 times in a row now, so if you have watched all these videos, you probably already know this whole routine by now. So regardless, let's get straight into it, shall we?
Then we've got the start of my MCU collection, which starts, of course, with Iron Man. So basically, I've got pretty much all these movies just on regular Blu-ray, mainly because, to be honest, I don't think the MCU movies look that good. They're like the emblematic example of modern movies looking very flat and sort of like, you know, the lighting just looks very bland and stuff. They don't look visually spectacle. However, they do seem to be improving, as you'll see later when we get to the end of the collection. But basically, for the most part, I think they don't look that great. Except for the Phase 1 movies. I think the Phase 1 movies actually look like really good because they look like proper damn films. So maybe I might try and get those at least on 4K. So, but anyway, back to the first movie, Iron Man. It's a classic. Like, I don't think anyone expected this to be as good as it was. Robert Downey Jr. owns Iron Man. Like, so much so that it completely reinvented the character. Because when you go and read Iron Man comics pre this movie, Tony Stark is completely different, and then post this, they were like, yeah, no, let's just rewrite Tony Stark to be like this. So the first instance of MCU synergy, really, in the comics. So, but yeah, Iron Man 1, great start to the MCU. Then we have The Incredible Hulk. This was always seen as the black sheep of the MCU for a while, mainly because due to various rights issues, as well as also the fact this has Edward Norton and not Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, this was sort of distanced for a lot of the time, and there was barely any references made to this movie in future MCU films. But personally, I've always quite enjoyed it. I think it's, especially now in retrospect now, when this is the only Hulk movie we've gotten in the MCU due to the fact that Universal owns the rights and refused to do another one without pinching Disney's money. I think Edward Norton is really interesting. I think he works as the Hulk, as Bruce Banner as well. Liv Tyler as Betty Ross, she's great. She's good. I think she's quite enjoyable. Tim Roth is really great as Eli Blomkins, who becomes the Abomination. Just, I love how he's just like at the start, he's like, what the hell are you? Like that whole bit when he's like, he threw a forklift like it was nothing more than a softball.
It threw a forklift truck like it was a softball.
But then he's so impressed by the Hulk's strength that he literally goes and like, he literally gets up his face at the whole scene at the university, and then Hulk just kicks him, and then he's just crippled until he gets the gamma serum. But yeah, I think it's a good film. It's definitely a lot more action-packed compared to Ang Lee's Hulk. Although I think Ang Lee's Hulk does the character more justice there. But yeah, I think this is still good. I think it's quite enjoyable. And especially now, this is the only Hulk film. It kind of holds a special place for that. So yeah. Then we have, hit the camera there. Now we've got Iron Man 2. So the sequel to Iron Man, and it's good, but it's definitely a step down. I think this has always been seen as the weakest film in phase 1, sorry. Either that or The Incredible Hulk, and I can see why. It is a bit messy. There is a lot going on, and that's because behind the scenes there was a lot of things happening where Jon Favreau had a bit of a bad time making this, because this was the first sort of thing, or it might have been Incredible Hulk actually, where Marvel Studios was really starting to interfere with their visions and stuff and how the movie should be made, because this movie does feel a lot like it's trying to set up for the Avengers, with of course the inclusion of Black Widow, as well as, you know, having Nick Fury in there and stuff. Like, it does feel a lot where it's trying to be an Avengers prequel film rather than Iron Man's second movie. I think there's some great sort of stuff in here. I do admire the attempt to adapt Demon in the Bottle with Tony becoming an alcoholic, is interesting, and I really like how it's sprung from the fact that the heart reactor that he's using is actually killing him. So I think that's sort of a great attribute. But I get the problem is it kind of gets dropped after that fight between him and Rhodey. Like, it's just like there's not really much of a payoff there with that. I think it's just there's an interesting sort of thing there, but it just doesn't really go anywhere. Whiplash is an alright villain. He's okay. Like, I think his entrance is damn cool at the, you know, the racetrack with the Grand Prix. I think that's damn cool. But I think is the villain himself is a bit weak, to be honest. It's just something about it. It's just like, yeah. However, Justin Hammer is fantastic. Like, Sam Rockwell is so charismatic, and I think he's really he's like the behind the scenes type villain, where he runs Hammer Tech and stuff. But I think he's just so damn charismatic and just so damn good as the anti Tony Stark. Is like, this is what Tony Stark would be if he didn't get captured by the Ten Rings and forced to build that suit in that cave with a box of scraps.
With a box of scraps!
So yeah, I think he's great, but overall this film does feel messy, and you can really tell the behind the scenes issues really impacted this film, because there's a lot of really interesting stuff, but a lot of stuff that just doesn't come together. It just feels a lot of the time unfocused and just a bit messy. Then moving on, we have Thor, which is a really great film, I think. In retrospect, especially after, you know, Love and Thunder, especially, I think going back to this movie and just seeing like Thor be just like seeing like an actual earnest, like serious look into Thor is pretty great. I mean, it does the whole thing where he loses his powers and he has to re-earn the title of being Thor, which I think is good. I mean, it does feel a bit of a chore now, but I think back then, I think it was quite special. So, I think it's a great fun film. Tom Hiddleston, of course, this is his first appearance as Loki, and I think he's damn great. Like, him basically scheming this whole thing and pretending to be a victim in all this, I think is damn great. So, yeah, great movie, and a really earnest take on the character. That I think was eventually got a bit lost. But from the trailers from Avengers Doomsday, I think it looks like we might actually have that type of Thor back. So, yeah, good film. Then we have, if I don't hit the camera, which I just did, then we've got Captain America, The First Avenger, which is a great film, but it's probably the weakest in terms of the Captain America trilogy, but that's just how strong the other two films are. But I think this is enjoyable. I think this decision to set this during World War II is great, and so basically this whole movie is leading up to what happened to his origin story, where he gets out of the
where he gets frozen in the ice. So, but yeah, I think this is great fun. Just a really fun, just awesome World War II movie, really. And I think gets Steve Rogers so well, just about this guy who just wants to do good. He wants to serve for his country, but due to his body, he is not able to, and so he goes for the psychiatrist, goes to this special program to become the first super soldier. So, so yeah, I think it's great fun. Hugo Weaving is great as Red Skull. Shame he absolutely hated doing it, so we never get Red Skull again. So they have to come up with new bad guys for Captain America to fight, rather than his arch nemesis. So, but it's alright. I think he's still good. He's pretty good here. So, but yeah, good film. Then we have the Avengers. What Phase 1 was building to, and what was seen as like the peak of superhero movies at the time. Just how everything like slotted together to create this, and this really shouldn't have worked, but it damn well did. I think. So yeah, this movie you can see 3D Blu-ray. The main reason I kind of bought this on 3D Blu-ray is I prefer the cover on this, because I had the DVD originally, and that had the cover of everyone on it, including Nick Fury, whereas the standard Blu-ray cover just has all the Avengers only and not Nick Fury, and I feel that's kind of unfair, because Nick Fury is so important to this movie, as well as Phil Coulson as well. So, but yeah, this movie is damn great. I mean, Hawkeye, Clint's not as well used here, but I think he does get better along the way. I think he gets a bit more character, whereas here he's pretty generic, because for the most of this movie he's possessed, and then when he gets possessed he doesn't have much personality. So yeah, I think also this movie, it's good, but I've watched this movie so many times that literally I can't remember I've watched this so many times that like it has been so long since I've rewatched this movie, just because I've rewatched it so many damn times. So, but yeah, it's really damn good. I think the way they brought everyone together is impossibly satisfying. Like, I don't know how it was pulled off so damn well, but they did it. So yeah, great movie. This is also the first movie I noticed where the MCU like grey type cinematography comes in, where everything starts to look a bit grey and a bit flatter. But this actually is a nice sort of change of pace for the franchise. I think what the issue is every other MCU movie a lot after this started to replicate this type of thing and try to do it, but I think this still did it quite well. It still looked pretty damn good, even though it was a lot more grayer and a bit more flatter. I still think there was a lot of dynamic color to this. So I think a lot of MCU movies going forward after this tried to replicate that, but just did not do it as well. And that's how we led up today, where a lot of these movies just look very flat and dull looking. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to actually giving this a try on 3D, because I've heard all the MCU movies are great on 3D. So there's a couple ones that I'm thinking I might actually pick up on 3D, because I've heard they actually look really damn good in 3D. So yeah. Then we've got Iron Man 3, which might be tied for the first movie as my favorite Iron Man film. I think it is damn great. I think it's such a bold decision to strip him back down and explore the whole thing about what is Iron Man. Is it Iron Man the suit, or is it Tony Stark? I think it's very fascinating. The whole thing where he's got literally PTSD from the Avengers is great, and it feels very real and just very vulnerable, and so different from any other hero we've gotten at this point. I think the action is damn great. Like that, the scene when his mansion just gets absolutely shredded is fantastic. And yeah, I think the whole twist with the Mandarin, I do enjoy it. To be honest, I've never read much Iron Man. Like, I became aware of it as I became getting into the Marvel comics and stuff, but I've never read, so I never really cared too much about the Mandarin and stuff. So, but I understand why people are annoyed. However, I think it works for this movie, because Aldrich Killian, with his whole thing about, like creating a fake terrorist for someone to aim the public at, I think it's just a really interesting plan and just a very fascinating look into that. And I think Killian's is an alright bad guy. Like the fact that he just hates Tony so much because he left him on the roof that one time back in 1999. Like, I think that's just pure just like pettiness. And yeah, I think he's an interesting villain. But I think him with all the tattoos and stuff and being like Iron the Mandarin it's a bit ridiculous there. So I'm like there. But I think, yeah, Iron Man 3 I think is great because it just goes back, it goes down in scale in a really introspective way, and is just like a great character study of Tony Stark. So I think it's a great film, and almost, I think, yeah, on almost pretty much all equal footing to the first movie. So that's my little hot take there. And then we have finally on this main shelf here, we've got Thor: The Dark World. So, oh boy, this movie. So I think when I've watched this, because I haven't rewatched the MCU all in order in a long time, because there's just so much of it. It's like, I kind of want to watch other movies. But from what I remember enjoying it, but this is sort of seen as, this was before Phase 4, this was seen as the worst MCU film, really. And then I could see why. Like, apparently this had a bunch of production problems. I think Patty Jenkins was supposed to was directing this, and then she dropped out. And basically that annoyed Natalie Portman, so she decided to be done with the franchise after this, until, of course, she came back in Love and Thunder. This movie just is trying to be so dark and sort of edgy that it comes across as like edgy a bit, like a lot of the time. Like, of course, you see it in the name, The Dark World. I think having Malekith and the Dark Elves it's cool that we actually get a movie with those guys, because I never thought we would ever get the Dark Elves in a movie, but we did. But they're all right. And I think poor Christopher Eccleston got shafted in this movie, which unfortunately seems to get shafted a lot, really, if you see what happened with him with Doctor Who and stuff. But I think he was all right. I think the performance was definitely hindered by the makeup and stuff, and you could tell his heart wasn't really in it a lot. But yeah, I think this is probably the worst MCU film out of the Infinity Saga itself. But yeah, I think also Tom Hiddleston is great as Loki, and it's cool to see him and Thor team up. Like, even though this is like literally right after the Avengers when they take Loki to Asgard. So I think, yeah, there's a couple of good stuff in here, but it really does feel like the weakest in terms of the MCU that had for a long time until we got to Phase 4. So yeah, so that does it for the MCU part of this shelf. Let's go and move on to the next shelf with the rest of the MCU stuff. Okay, moving on, we get to Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which is probably my favorite MCU movie. I think this movie is just so damn good. I think just everything about it works so well. This was, of course, the Russo brothers' first MCU movie, and they knocked it out of the park, basically. Like, just turning Captain America into like a spy type thriller, espionage, like political thriller, was just absolutely genius. The action is probably the best the MCU has ever had, maybe along the line, same with Shang-Chi, but just the action and the set pieces in this are phenomenal. Like, that highway chase, the final fight between Winter Soldier and Cap on the top of the helicarriers, as well as the opening fight scene on the boat is just damn good. Just the action is just so damn good. And of course the story in this is just absolutely great, with spoilers for this movie that came out almost over 10 years ago now. But the reveal that Hydra has secretly been growing inside S.H.I.E.L.D. ever since its formation is just one of the biggest, like, plot twists. I remember watching this for the first time and just my brain just going like, what? And it's just like so crazy. Like, just like, and what's great about this is it's such a pivotal point in the entire MCU, because of course this is given with that revelation, S.H.I.E.L.D. goes down, Hydra goes down, it all crumbles, but it sets further consequences for the rest of the universe in a certain other TV show, which I'll get to I'll get to soon. But yeah, I think this is just such a damn good film. It's just so rewatchable too. Something about this movie, I could just rewatch it. I think it's just so damn good. It's got that espionage thriller, also paranoia tone to it, like where Steve and Natasha, Black Widow, are on the run, and they have to just like stay just like completely in like just off the grid, inconspicuous, because S.H.I.E.L.D. has, what they find out, has been secretly growing Hydra, and most of Hydra has pretty much taken over from the rest of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff. But yeah, and then also all the stuff with, of course, the revelation that Bucky is the Winter Soldier, and there's some fantastic character work there when Steve finds out that the Winter Soldier is Bucky. Just like that whole ending is just fantastic. So yeah, this is my favorite MCU movie. I don't think it will ever be topped because it's just so damn good. And it's just a very, very, such a great film, and just a great, not just a comic book film, just a great film and stuff, and some really good things about, talking about surveillance and stuff. Like, even before all the stuff with Hydra is revealed, like, Steve's still opposed to S.H.I.E.L.D. with how they're enacting their whole helicarrier plan, where they're literally going to have a gun just pointed at every innocent person. Like, there's some really interesting things about, surveillance and how much we should be giving these people control over, and what they view as protection. So, but yeah, this fantastic film, absolutely awesome. The color palette this is, I think, the first real MCU movie, I think, after the Avengers, that tries to make the grey sort of flat lighting a bit. But I think it works for this movie because of like the eerie tone of it, the how like everything's just sort of it's like very cold and very sort of just, you can't trust anything. Like, I think it works for the tone of this movie personally, but going forward, it's like, okay, I would like some more color in my other MCU movies, please. But yeah, so maybe I might think of upgrading this to 4K, even though visually it might not look the best. So it's just really my favorite of the entire universe. So yeah. Then we move on to Guardians of the Galaxy, which I mean is very damn good. I think it is very good. But to be honest, this is probably my least favorite of the Guardians trilogy, and that's a testament to how good this trilogy is. I think James Gunn just absolutely knocked it out of the park. Like, taking one of the most forgetful and niche comic book teams and just completely reinventing them for this, and it very much paid off. Like, most of the time when they reinvent comic book characters, it's always for the worse, but this is the one rare time where it actually worked very damn well. I was, of course, not really that familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy. Actually, I was actually kind of familiar with them because they appeared that one time in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, that TV show that came out right around when the first Avengers movie came out, and that was very much adapting stuff from the regular comic books and stuff. I only knew from them, but then I watched this movie and they're all completely different, but I think it all works. I think the team's great. I think it's just a really nice, just fun film about all these misfits coming together and like becoming essentially a family, but basically this one more team. I think the second and third movies, especially, when they become more of a family. This one seems to be, I think it's Volume 1 and 3 are regarded as the best ones, and Volume 2 the weakest, but I personally view this one as the weakest, mainly because of Ronan. I think Ronan is just one of the emblematic examples of MCU bad guy, where he's all threat and just not much substance. Like, he's just a generic goon who just works for Thanos, and he's just got a big hammer. Like, there's not really much to him. He very much fits the archetype of what the MCU would have a lot later on, and maybe some beforehand, with villains who just just don't really have that much staying power, not much substance. They just feel very generic and stuff. So that's sort of the main reason, because I think Ego and the High Evolutionary are way better villains in Volume 2 and 3. So, but I think this is still a great film. It's just everything else is so damn good. I think the final act is pretty damn cool, where they have to defend Nova from Ronan's forces. So, and then it all comes to the head with a dance off, which I would roll my eyes at, because that feels, especially now, emblematic of MCU type humor. However, I still think it gives a proper sort of quite serious, quite emotional, impactful ending with the whole bit right after, where they all are inside pretty much the Power Stone, and Peter sees his mom, and then they all join hands and stuff. So I think it still very much works as the climactic sort of finale of the movie, even if you have a little silly dance off in it. So, but yeah, Guardians I think is great. I think it is damn good. So yeah, good movie. Then we have Avengers Age of Ultron, which I really do enjoy. Some parts of it I actually prefer over the first movie. Although a lot of people sort of seem to say this is the weakest of the Avengers films, and I guess I could see why. But for the main reason I like it is, it might be the reason why most people don't like it, is because it's a very middle of the sandwich in terms of Avengers movies. It's just a simple like Avengers movie. Like the first one, of course, sets up the Avengers. This one, it just feels like another adventure. Whereas Infinity War and Endgame are, of course, like the climax of like the entire Infinity Saga. So this one just feels just like another just sort of Avengers film, and that's why I like it. Like it feels very much in. It feels like very much in tone with the comics, where you just have a simple like 4 or 5 issue story where it's just the Avengers just going on another adventure, just like with no status quo type consequences. Although there is, of course, lots of status quo consequences in this movie, of course, because this is what causes the big thing with Captain America Civil War. But anyway, I think, yeah, it's cool to have Ultron in this. Bit of a shame that they kind of change him pretty much completely, with the fact that he's invented by Tony Stark instead of Hank Pym. But of course, I understand why I had to do that, because Hank Pym wasn't introduced until the next MCU movie, and wasn't in the first movie. And then the other thing with Ultron is he's charismatic, and I guess he's just got a personality compared to the comics, where he's just a standard robot. But I don't know. Personally, my main sort of thing with Ultron is, I sort of grew up, of course, I think I mentioned before when I was talking previously about Guardians, where I grew up on the main Avengers sort of property I grew up on was Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And so in that TV show, you had Hank Pym from the beginning as part of the Avengers, and you had him create Ultron. And Ultron is pretty much just ripped straight from the comics, where he's just a plain robot, basically. And I always kind of latched on to that. And so when this came out, I was like, oh, he's got a quirky personality played by James Spader. That's interesting. And so I was kind of like taken aback by that. But I understand why they did that now, because since it's designed by Tony Stark, he's probably got like a snarky type sort of attitude like Tony Stark does. But yeah, I think, yeah, everything else I think is great. I mean, the whole thing with the romance between Natasha and Bruce Banner Hulk is a bit, I mean, yeah, it comes out of sort of left field, and sort of does feel quite a bit underdeveloped. But the other one thing I like about this one is it also like greatly improves Hawkeye. Like it goes to extreme lengths to make you actually like the guy, and I think it does it quite well. I think they made Clint like a much improved character here. So yeah, and then of course this also has the introduction of Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and they're pretty damn good. I think they're quite good. Of course, this was back when Fox still had the rights for the X-Men and mutants, so they couldn't call them mutants. So they got their powers from like Loki's spear, but as with the implication of WandaVision, they seem to be retconning that now since they've got the rights. So I think they're trying to retcon that to be the mutant, but that might be over now considering I think Scarlet Witch's story might be done in the MCU. Maybe, I don't know. I can't remember what was being said after Multiverse of Madness came out. But anyway, yeah, I think I really do enjoy Age of Ultron personally. I think there's a lot of good stuff in it, and it's a really nice because it just feels like just a simple adventure where the Avengers have to take on a thing they've created, and just with as an appropriate level final climax with Sokovia being raised up into the air and stuff. So yeah, but yeah, good movie. Then we've got Ant-Man. So I really did enjoy this when it first came out. I think it was absolutely great. I think a lot of people did. After getting a whole trilogy of movies, you can feel that this one is the best one by a large margin. And I think I know the reason why. Basically, this movie was halfway through production where, or maybe a quarter, in maybe the writing stage, where apparently Edgar Wright was going to do it. The one who did Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, all those movies. Apparently he was in the middle of writing this, but due to creative differences, he left. So, which most likely means Marvel wanted to make it like sort of in tone and brand with their other movies, and Edgar Wright was like, "No, I don't want to do that," so he left. So, but watching this now, you can definitely see like the elements of Edgar Wright's sort of writing and a tiny bit of his style sort of in this. So that's probably why I think this is probably considered the best one, because it's just a damn good. Because I think it also like, it's not just a regular comic book movie; it's a heist movie, and I think it's great. The decision to make Scott Lang the protagonist, I think, is, I mean, it's all right. I think I understand why they did that, because comics Hank Pym is just known. His character now is to be just an absolute awful person. Both in 616, in the Earth 616 comics, and the Ultimate Universe, where he's just way worse. So I understand why they did that, but the other thing, like I say, I keep bringing up with Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, this would have been a perfect place to present a new Hank Pym who is not an evil douchebag. I think you could have had a young Hank Pym here rather than just going straight to legacy character Scott Lang, but it is what it is. And I think Michael Douglas and Paul Rudd have great back and forth between as Scott and Hank. So yeah, I think it's a great fun film, and just so really cool creatively with seeing how he shrinks and how he interacts with the other ants and stuff. So the villain, Darren, I believe his name is, he's a bit generic. He falls very, very much into the trope again of just generic MCU villain. Although the fact that in Quantumania it's revealed that he becomes MODOK is just ridiculous, so I guess that makes him at least kind of memorable, just not in a good way. So but yeah, Ant-Man, good movie. Then we've got Captain America Civil War, which for a lot of people I think is regarded as the best of the Captain America trilogy. I mean, the Captain America trilogy, and I think is only matched by probably Guardians as the best individual each MCU character's trilogy in the sense, because every movie is the weakest movie is an 8 out of 10 for this one, but I think Guardians might be better, because I think a lot of people regard all three of those at least 9 and 10 and above. But anyway, this is another rare instance where the adaptation is better than the source material, because while I do have fond memories of reading comic book Civil War, it's not a great comic. I think this focuses it a lot better, brings it to a head, has an actual good conflict where both opposite sides are still in character, compared to the comics where you can really tell, like, even though the whole thing is like, whose side is you on, who's right, who's wrong, like, as you read it, you're like, Tony Stark is in the wrong. Like, not only is he wrong, he is like a completely different character. He's like a borderline fascist in the comic. Whereas in this, he actually has some good points, and also you get some good scenes, like, for example, the scene after where I can't remember what after scene is it, but it's when Natasha goes to Tony and basically says they played this wrong, like they messed up, how they tried to like capture Bucky Barnes and stuff. So it shows like even on Tony's own team, the pro registration side, they're like, this is not the way we should be doing it. And so I think that's what makes this adaptation better. And I think also just the inclusion of Bucky Barnes is fantastic, because that provides a perfect sort of division between Tony and Cap, and especially at the end when you find out that Bucky killed Tony's parents. So I think this just makes it, this so improves it so much. This also, of course, introduces Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and I think when I first watched it, I was like, yeah, that's cool. But we'll talk a little bit more about my thoughts on MCU Spider-Man when we get to the next movie. But for the moment, I think, yeah, like, this movie just is so damn good. Again, this does have the sort of very flat sort of lighting, very greyish MCU color tone, and I guess you could say it follows on with the Russo's previous movies, Winter Soldier, with it being all about espionage and everything's just very dreary in tone and stuff. But for this one, I'm like, I would really like to see some more color, please, especially in that airport fight scene. Like, if we could just get a bit more color there, that would be great. But anyway, of course, I almost completely forgot to mention Baron Zemo, who's one of the best villains. Like, and I think that's also that's what also makes it a great inclusion, is you actually have a villain who is actually pulling the strings behind the scenes. I think that's better and keeps everything keeps the characters in character rather than character assassinating. Just having this guy who is like pulling both sides because he knows like Tony's going to react to this or Steve's going to react like this and stuff. So I think that's great. And then just the performance is just absolutely fantastic. So great. And then, of course, this also introduces Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, and he's pretty damn good. I keep talking back to Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, but that was where I first saw it was introduced to Black Panther, and so he was a bit different compared to the one I saw, but I was like, hey, that's cool, and I think he's damn cool. And then like I really get behind him, and what, like, when, you know, his dad dies and he thinks Bucky did it, so he's hell-bent on vengeance, but then he finds out like it's not, and then he realizes like vengeance is consuming him, and as well as the Avengers as a whole. So yeah, but yeah, Civil War is a fantastic film, and one of the rare exceptions where it's a better adaptation of the source material than the source material. Then we've got Spider-Man Homecoming. Okay, let's talk about this. So, Spider-Man is my personal favorite comic book character. So, I've pretty much read every single, at least 616 comic once. So, I'm a massive, massive fan of him, and I know a lot about all his lore and all his character inserts and character aspects and such. So this movie, this came out in 2017, of course. I was about, where was I? I was probably in about 16 or 17, I think, around that time. So I went and saw this movie, and I remember coming out of it thinking, oof. Like, I was just like, ugh, I wasn't really on board with it. I think I wasn't much of a fan. Pete being just a whole, like, a lot of people on the internet called him Iron Boy Jr., where he's always just relying on Stark Tech. He's always just wanting approval for Tony Stark and stuff. And I think I just, like, really just didn't like this Peter Parker just not having any really, like, too much agency and stuff. However, going back, I sort of realized that's stupid, because the entire ending of that movie is him having so much agency. But anyway, what I sort of came to realize why I wasn't really a fan of MCU Spider-Man was because I was sick of high school Spider-Man. Like, when I got into the comics, and especially when I grew up on the animated series, that had college era sort of adult Peter Parker. So, and then when I started getting into the comics around the same time, of course, Pete's only in high school for like maybe the first like 30 or so issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and then for the rest of the past like 60 years, he is an adult. So I always thought he was more compelling as an adult, personally. So as just like time went on throughout, like, you know, as adaptions came out of stuff, and it was pretty much, most of the time, it was pretty much all him set in high school and stuff, I kind of got a bit sort of fed up. So when they introduced him in the MCU, I was hoping, hey, can we just skip all the high school stuff and have him straight be adult? But no. So I think that's probably why I felt really deflated with this movie when I first saw it. But I have come around to it. I still think, for the most part, I am still, like, I was a bit sort of apprehensive to the fact that it being a high school Spider-Man movie, and I think this is probably the most high school it gets, because I believe director John Watts said he wanted to make it like a John Hughes type of film, like Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, even to the point where you see visual references to those movies in this movie. But I think it's great. I think it's good. Coming back to it, I think Vulture is fantastic. I think it's another one where I think they've improved on the source material, because while I do like Adrian Toombs, he doesn't have too much of a character basis. Like, we get later on, like, him having a daughter and him having cancer and stuff, but we never really get a great memorable like Vulture story, really. Like, he's one of the recurring characters where he doesn't really do a whole lot, and he's more like a punching bag. So reinventing him to be this guy who's screwed over by Tony Stark, and then basically salvages all this tech to be like sold on like the black market and stuff to keep it living and stuff. And I think that it's really kind of compelling and stuff. So I think, yeah, and I think that scene when Pete first finds out that Vulture is Liz Allen's dad is fantastic, as they just go down, as he's taking them to the prom, and he's like, or the homecoming, as Liz is like explaining what was happening in like Washington DC, he just puts all the pieces together. And so I was like, I remember really did liking that, and I think that's a great sort of way to do it. And then I think the final act is pretty damn good, with him like taking down Vulture on the big plane. I think that's a great sort of action set piece. So yeah, I think I was a bit harsh on this movie when I first watched it, but I've come to sort of appreciate it more a bit now, with basically, like, I put my prejudices against high school Spider-Man aside, and I think it does some really good stuff, like when he refuses to like become Spider-Man at a party, as well as when he has to leave Liz at the dance to go stop her dad, and then of course at the end when he declines to join the Avengers. I think all that is peak Spider-Man and who Peter Parker is, and so I think that's really damn good. So personally, while I'm not an overall massive fan, I would say, of this version of Spider-Man, he's probably my least favorite in terms of live action. I still think he's great. So yeah, that's my thoughts, rambling thoughts on this. And don't worry, we've got more thoughts once we reach the other two movies. So let's move on. Then jumping ahead a bit, we've got Thor Ragnarok. Which at the time when I saw it, I was like, this is the best Thor movie, because I think it was just so blockbuster and action packed. But now I would say probably the first movie, it might be the best one, I think. Like, because going back, I think I sort of more appreciated the serious sort of Shakespearean sort of tone and themes that they did with that first movie. But I think this is still really enjoyable. This is, of course, when Taika Waititi took over, and you could definitely feel it, like with a bunch of Kiwi actors, as well as also just the comedy is increased a lot here, which, I mean, it's strange, because I think the balance is mostly okay for this, especially considering this is supposed to be the darkest Thor movie yet, because it's all about Asgard getting destroyed. But I think the comedy is balanced kind of well. There are a couple of times where it does get into just borderline silly, which, of course, as we know with what happened with the next Thor movie, that movie just excelled into just so stupid and so over the top. So I think going back here, I can sort of see there are some sort of, might be a bit more sort of critical here, because you can see a lot of that silly tone almost overstepping a bit. So, but I still think it's great. I think it's good fun. I think it's cool to have a bit of an adaptation of Planet Hulk. Shame that it's not a full adaptation, but due to Universal having the rights for Hulk, they can't make another Hulk movie. So I guess this is as good as we get, and I guess that's okay. Yeah, I think the whole thing with Hela is quite interesting, with the fact that like Thor and Loki had a secret sister, and she was just really evil to the point where Odin just locked her away. I think this is also just a great sort of character arc for Thor, where he just loses like everything, and then has to rebuild himself up into just being just the most powerful person in the Marvel universe. Like, even if he wasn't before, like that final scene, that final act when he's just exploding lightning just around himself. Like, anytime he just moves, lightning just comes out of him and just takes out any of Hela's like army, is damn awesome. And I really wish we kind of stuck with that, but I get why they had him get Stormbreaker and only use his power through that, because at the end of this movie, like, he's too OP. But yeah, Thor Ragnarok, damn good time. This also has a bit of the grey sort of lighting of the MCU, which is a shame, because there's a lot of color in this movie, but it's just got that grey type flat lighting filter over it, which is a bit of a shame. So, but it is what it is, and that's again why I really only have these on Blu-ray, standard Blu-ray, and not 4K. So, but yeah, Thor Ragnarok, great, good movie, but a bit apprehensive to come back to at times, given what came after this. Then we've got Avengers Infinity War, which for a lot of people is regarded as just the peak of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I can see why. I think this is what the entire like 10 years prior was building to. This was just an amazing event to experience. This was, of course, when Thanos properly came, even though he was teased throughout the whole movie, the whole universe. This was his first big introduction, and man, what an introduction. The decision to have the entire cast of the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy all separated into like three teams as such, I think was expertly done, and probably what makes this so successful, because otherwise it would just be an absolute clash of just characters and just a mess. But the fact that they separate it to the point where, yeah, like all of the Avengers don't meet in this movie, they only come back in Endgame. So I think that is very much very much prominent for the success of this movie and how much it works. And just this movie where it's just like they are just trying to fight this guy who just keeps on getting more stones. So many disposable waves of armies at his disposal, and he's just so unrelenting. I think the other thing is that makes this movie so good is how much it actually focuses on Thanos, and you get into his backstory and his insight of why he's doing this, about like how, like, you know, overpopulation, like shortage of food and stuff. Like, the whole universe would be better and have a better future if we halved the population. So, and I think that's a really great sort of interesting motivation for him and stuff. And I think Josh Brolin does great with the character in both voice work and motion capture. So yeah, and then of course it all comes to this climax where you think they're just about to stop him, and then the worst thing happens when he actually gets all the stones and snaps, and half the universe just disappears. Like, I think I remember when I went and saw it on like opening night with all my friends, we all walked in there, and then when we walked out, I don't think any of us really said a word as we just walked out of the theater. Like, we were just in this state of just like absolute shock. Like, you ended it like that? Oh my word! Now, I think I remember when I heard about it, I was like, I think I anticipated a tiny bit that we're going to end on a cliffhanger, because this was originally supposed to be a two-parter. That Endgame was supposed to be Infinity War Part 2. So I always thought maybe they would end it on a cliffhanger, but I didn't think they would end on a cliffhanger like this. Like, oh man, like, they just full on lose at the end of this. And I think that's why a lot of people regard this as the 21st century equivalent of The Empire Strikes Back, because it's a sequel that is just darker than the others and just has a jaw-dropping cliffhanger where just everyone loses, really. The bad guys win. Like, all the good guys lose. It's like absolutely crazy and devastating. So yeah, Avengers Infinity War, probably, yeah, I would say probably the peak, although I might slightly prefer Endgame, but that's probably because it's more, fan servicey and crowd pleasing compared to this movie, which is structurally, I think, a better movie. Then we've got Captain Marvel. I think I remember this and sort of, I think Ant-Man and the Wasp was sort of seen as the first sort of MCU films where people, apart from Thor: The Dark World, where a lot of people were like, yeah, I think we're getting a bit sort of stale here. But I think Captain Marvel's sort of okay. I think Brie Larson is great as Carol Danvers. I think she's really cool. I think the big contention is the Skrulls, where basically they introduce the Skrulls here, and then it's revealed that they're actually a refugee sort of species now, and that they're pretty much good guys, which was quite a sort of shock to me, considering at this point I had delved into the comics, so I read stuff like Secret Invasion and stuff, so I knew Skrulls are bad. So it felt weird to make a movie where Skrulls are the good guys and we're supposed to feel sympathetic for them. But I think it still works, because especially with the Secret Invasion show, even though that show people regard as the worst thing the MCU has actually done, I think you can always chalk it up to be like, the Skrulls we saw in this one are a small faction that were different from the big Skrull collective, and just wanted to get away from the main Skrull empire and such. So you can kind of chalk that up and to that, but that's my personal headcanon. But that will probably be disputed once more stuff with Skrulls come out. So, but yeah, I think I remember really enjoying it. I think the decision to set it in the 90s is cool. Of course they had to do that because they wanted to set up how Nick Fury contacts her at the end of Infinity War. Although again, a lot of people bring up the whole thing about when an MCU movie is set prior to the Avengers, or any MCU movie really, is like, where was Carol during XYZ, Chitauri invasion, Sokovia, Rising Out of the Sky, all that. And I mean, yeah, I get it. It's a reasonable explanation, but you can always I personally that's the fun of comics, just like chalk it up to being like, oh, she's just in deep space. And I think like throughout the movie, all those movies, Nick Fury was probably like, nah, I think the Avengers can handle this. So yeah, but yeah, I think this was also great to see Clark Gregg back as Phil Coulson after he got killed off in the Avengers. Although I sort of never really sort of missed him, because I was watching his main show, which I'll get to in a soon, but it was just good to see him in a movie again. The whole explanation though for how Nick Fury lost his eye is absolutely stupid. Like, the setup that they gave in Winter Soldier about how like with the vague sort of backstory of Fury trusting someone that he shouldn't have, and that person was the one to give him this scarred eye, was so interesting. But then we find out it's all because for a stupid joke of a cat just scratching his eye, which is absolutely stupid and genuinely probably one of the worst moments in the entire MCU. Like, it's just that bad and just completely squanders an interesting backstory for Nick Fury and such. Like, and you see it in Winter Soldier too, because you see the eyes, like there is something gnarly happened there, and then you get to this movie and you find out it's only that eye's only gnarly just because a bloody cat scratched it. Like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, that's when like the MCU humor just really. I think that's one of the worst instances of MCU humor, really.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
Oh, motherfucking!
Yeah, I think, this first movie, it's okay. I think it's enjoyable. I do miss having the actual Kree Supreme Intelligence, you know, the one with the big head in the jar. I wish they had that, but I understand why they made it so that it's like a simulation thing where you see the Supreme Intelligence is someone that you know from your past and stuff, as well as also the fact they switched the original Captain Marvel's gender. Which I think it works for this because, you know, this is supposed to be like this is the MCU's first female-led superhero movie, so basically, yeah, like I think it does make more sense for Carol's mentor to be female rather than male. So, but regardless, I think, yeah, Captain Marvel, it's all right, but I think it is definitely sort of one of the weaker aspects. Not because of Brie Larson at all. I think she's actually really damn good in it. Then we have Avengers Endgame in steelbook form. So, in hindsight, this is not one of the greatest steelbooks. It actually looks pretty cheap. Like, you've got all these PNGs of all the Avengers stuck on, and some of the proportions are a bit odd. But I got this when it came out because I wanted to get the steelbook of Infinity War, but then I missed out. So when this came out, I was like, I want to pick this up immediately. Like, I just want it in steelbook form. And I thought at the time, this cover looked actually really nice. But in hindsight, it didn't. So yes, I was there. I saw this in the movies a lot of times. In fact, I think I still have my tickets. Yep, there we are. They're all faded now, pretty much. So you can't sort of see in there. But all those are tickets of when I saw it, like maybe like 3 or 4 times. So yeah, I went and, like with most of the population of the planet, I saw it because this was for a while the highest grossing film of all time. And while I don't think it deserves that reputation, I think it's still a great and surprisingly confident conclusion just to not just the Infinity Saga, but arguably the whole MCU as a whole. I think there is just a lot of great stuff here. The ballsy move to have it all take place 5 years later is crazy. Like, I remember first seeing that in the cinema and seeing that title card pop up. Everyone was just like, what the hell? Like, that was absolutely crazy. I think the plot to finally go into time travel is very interesting as we go back to the previous movies. I think is great to get the stones and stuff. I think a lot of that is great. I think all the characters are damn good. I think that it's a great decision to have this one be all the original Avengers, pretty much. Like, all of them, like, of course, they were the ones to survive the snap, but it's the last hurrah for the original team and such. And, of course, it all leads into that massive final battle where just everyone just comes back. Shame it doesn't look that good visually, but yeah. I think also there's some other interesting things. I think, yeah, also the ballsy move to kill off like present day Thanos just in like the first like 20 minutes is crazy, because I think that really set people's like expectations to go in a completely different direction. Like, people were like, where does this movie go now? And then of course we find out, yeah, no, it's 2014 or 2015 Thanos who's the main bad guy. But I think, yeah, that works and stuff. So yeah, of course, yeah, this being the final one, this kills a couple of Avengers and has the others retire. Every ending is earned, I think. I think every ending works for everyone, and I think it's just a great conclusion just to the MCU, just to the Infinity Saga, and arguably the MCU as a whole, which is why I think, yeah, a lot of people kind of stopped caring about the MCU for this, because this gave the best ending that this universe really could have. So I think, like after this, I think, yeah, a lot of people were like, it's a great universe, it's amazing, but everything has to end sometime, and a lot of people thought this was where it should have ended. So yeah, I think this movie, a fantastic end, and the end, of course, really of the golden age, you could probably say, of the MCU. Then we've got Spider-Man Far From Home. Oh, here we go, back to talking about Spider-Man. I remember when I first saw this, I much preferred it over Homecoming. I think it's because it felt more Spider-Man, really. The other thing I forgot to talk about Homecoming is, one of the other things I didn't like about it was, like, there's no good swinging scenes. Like, for pretty much all the movie, Pete's just in Queens or in the suburbs. Like, there's no good, like, swinging scenes, whereas in this, I mean, there's not really any until, like, the last, like, maybe, like, 10 minutes. But I was kind of happy to see at least some form of swinging scenes. But, yeah, I think this movie is... I'm sort of a bit mixed on it sort of now. I think the action is a step up. I think Mysterio is great, even though we're doing the same thing motivation-wise, where he hates Tony Stark. I think it's a bit of a shame that we don't have Mysterio's mysticism, but I understand why they replaced it with technology, and I think the drones are kind of interesting, and it's kind of interesting to see, like, it's sort of going into that sort of fake news, sort of like deep fake sort of things, where Mysterio is trying to engineer this Avengers level threat that's not real. I think that's kind of cool, and also cool where he starts off being a hero at times. So I think that's sort of interesting. The main sort of issues I have is sort of the characters, mainly Pete. I think Pete is... He's not... I think he feels like he regresses quite a bit compared to Homecoming. Like, for some reason now he likes MJ, even though that was not set up at all. Like, in Homecoming, MJ was just the quirky sort of comic relief character that they're just sitting next to, who just brings up sort of things. Suddenly now he really likes MJ and stuff. I think that's sort of a bit bizarre. The whole thing with him accidentally setting a drone strike on Brad is ridiculous. Like, I don't know what... That's just like, what? And it's also like, why would Tony Stark entrust Pete at that time with a satellite? Like, at least just give it to him when he's 18. Like, it's like absolutely ridiculous. I don't mind him actually making his suit, even if it's all part of, like, you know, him using nanotech and stuff. I think it's cool that we actually get him to the building steps to him learning to build his own suit and stuff and such. But yeah, and I think the action is pretty damn great. I think that whole final act where Pete has to use his spider sense to overcome the illusion of the drones is absolutely fantastic, even though if it's ripped straight from Spectacular Spider-Man. But anyway, I think, yeah, the characters are a bit sort of mixed here. I think, yeah, a couple of things like Pete's character a bit. Brad as well is just... I mean, Brad's interesting because it's like, Brad's just pretty much more what Flash should be, like just an absolute arsehole. And then we get to Flash as well, who's just not really a character at all. Like, he's just a guy who just makes fun of Pete at times, and I don't really get the vibe of him being a bully. And I get that's because, like, you know, they were trying to modernize it where, like, bullies aren't like this big threatening jock-like characters anymore. But you go and look at stuff like Cobra Kai. Like, Cobra Kai got it down so damn well with the concept of bullying, especially in today's age. And then you just go back and see this, and Flash is just not a bully. He's just a guy who just makes snarky remarks at Pete. Like, Pete's never never gets pissed off at him and stuff. Like, it's bizarre. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good and a lot of things that I'm not a fan of in this movie. But I think overall, I think I might prefer it over Homecoming. Then jumping right ahead to the next Spider-Man movie, we've got Spider-Man: No Way Home. I mean, this movie was again like this was a massive movie. I mean, of course, this is what brought back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and I think this is probably my favorite of the trilogy. Even though I think the first half is really rough, I think for the first half it's pretty just iffy. I do like though that like Pete feels guilty for the fallout of his identity getting revealed, and how he says to like the college woman to allow his friends to get in because they don't deserve the blowback that his identity exposure is getting. I think this is when it really focuses up to be a proper Spider-Man movie in the second half. I think having all these villains from the other movies come in, I think it does feel a bit nostalgia baity, but I think it does work quite well. I think mainly bringing back Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn, I think is great. Although I'm not a massive fan of what they do with his character here, where they basically just make him be Norman Osborn is the good guy, Green Goblin is the bad guy, and it's like a Jekyll and Hyde Hulk and Bruce thing where the Goblin is what makes Norman do evil things, which even if you go back to the first movie, you realize that's not true. Like, Norman Osborn himself is an absolute awful person who does all this stuff. He just uses the Goblin persona to amplify that and justify that to himself. So here in this, it's a bit iffy because like Norman Osborn is seen as the victim in this, and the Goblin is the main issue, when really Norman himself is supposed to be the arsehole. But that's just me. But I still think Willem Dafoe gives a fantastic performance in this. Like that whole scene when Pete like figures out that the Goblin persona has taken over is fantastic. That leads to that greatly shot like fight scene between him and Green Goblin, I think is great. And then, of course, he's the one to take out Aunt May and stuff, which is absolutely crazy. But that I remember watching it, I was like, this is what I want. Like, this is like giving Green Goblin, of course, is I would definitely say his arch nemesis, and you could definitely see why in this movie, where he just gets under Peter's skin like no one else, and he's also the one to cause the most tragedy from him, where he's the one who kills Aunt May in this, which is absolutely crazy. This, of course, gives Aunt May the great power, great responsibility line, which is, I mean, works for this Spider-Man. But again, I didn't mention this before, but what is up with the obsession with not having Uncle Ben mentioned in this universe? Like, to the point where it's got to be some sort of rights thing, surely. Because in this movie, when she dies, when we see her tombstone, we only just see her tombstone. We never see Ben Parker's tombstone. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Like, why are we so allergic to having Uncle Ben mentioned when he should be the introduction? And I get that this movie makes it so that Aunt May is actually Uncle Ben's sort of moment and such. So I understand that, but it just feels baffling why you just didn't have Uncle Ben in the first place. So I think also the inclusion of the other two Peters, while you can argue that that's just simple fan service, it actually does something with the characters where they have to help main MCU Peter overcome his grief as well as his anger, and also help him stop all the other villains. And I think it's great. I think Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire excel. Tobey Maguire gets a lot more quips in this movie than he ever did in the original trilogy, so I think that's kind of enjoyable. So this movie, I think, is my favorite and probably the best movie the trilogy, even though I think the first half is just not great. I think it's the second half that's saved it. And also, like I've mentioned with a lot of the other movies, the lighting of it just looks really just Yeah, especially when in the final act, like when they all have that iconic, hero pose with all three of them, that should look visually gorgeous, but instead it looks very murky. So it kind of sort of always takes away a bit of the impact of that scene for me personally. But yeah, of course, this then leads to the ending, which is just so damn crazy with Pete like deciding that that Stranger's spell needs to be cast, except they're going to make it so instead of everyone forgetting Spider-Man, everyone's going to forget Peter Parker. And I think that's a really interesting idea. This is sort of takes elements from One Moment in Time and One More Day, which are just might be the worst pieces of fiction I think I've ever read. But I think it delivers it so much better here compared to those books, where it's all about, like you sort of basically, it's the same sort of thing with One More Day, except it's not for selfish reasons about wanting to keep his aunt alive. It's all about to protect his friends, and protect everyone closest to him. So, and it works great because then it resets him to ground zero where no hero knows what identity he is. So, and then it just basically it leaves him off where really Spider-Man should have started, where he's a broke guy, he's made his own suit, and he's fighting street level crime. And so basically, I guess, you can kind of view this whole trilogy as Peter becoming Spider-Man, essentially, like the proper Spider-Man, and so I guess you can view it as that. And personally, I can kind of see that, but to be honest, I don't think it excuses all the trips and things in his character, because it feels like I understand you're doing that, but you really, due to time convenience, because these movies, this is the other thing I sort of have a problem with Spider-Man in the movies, is Spider-Man is probably more better formatted for a TV show rather than a movie, because movies take so long to make, as well as also they're quite short in the long run. They're only maybe 2.5 hours per movie. And if you look at Spider-Man, his whole character growth is him going from a teenager all the way to becoming an adult, and to be honest, really him becoming a family man and a dad, married with kids and such. So I think that's what Spider-Man should be always going to. It's not sustainable as a movie, personally. I think you're going to be jumping a lot of things across status quos when you make a new movie and such. In order to tell a compelling kind of Spider-Man sort of character growth, where he goes from teenager to a father with kids, I think you would probably need 6 or 7 movies with the same actor, and I don't think one actor is going to stick around for 7 movies. But who knows? It depends. Apparently after Spider-Man Brand New Day, Tom Holland said he might be down for doing a couple of more movies, so we might be getting up to him being in 6 movies. But my point is, I think having a whole trilogy just to set him up as Spider-Man doesn't feel it was worth it, considering how much more things we want to have with this Spider-Man. And I think having 3 movies to set him up just feels a bit of a waste in terms of what we could have just had this all, just that whole character journey in that first movie, and then we just move on to where we can get to him becoming more older and doing traditional Spider-Man things. But that's just me personally. So yeah, that's my personal view. And to be honest, I am now really excited for Brand New Day with the trailer that just came out. I think especially with the new director, I think the visuals look actually really damn good. And just sort of the street levelness of it looks damn good, even though we've got stuff like him finding the hand and stuff, and potentially also meeting Jean Grey, which I really hope they don't do. But yeah, so I think the future looks very bright for Spider-Man personally. But just this whole trilogy, I'm not sure if I'm the biggest fan of. If the intention was supposed to be that this entire trilogy was supposed to be a build-up to him becoming the true proper Spider-Man at the end of this movie. But regardless, I think this one was the best of the trilogy. So that's all my thoughts on the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. So yeah, point to take is I have few issues here and there with the character, but I think especially now with Brand New Day, I'm very much optimistic and very much looking forward to the new direction that they're taking the character in. Then moving on, we've got Deadpool and Wolverine. So this is just the standard Blu-ray from the UK, where they're now basically making them really, really thin, because they're based on the US Blu-rays, because they have thinner spines. But anyway, this movie is... It's good. I think it is good. But I think it's my least favorite in terms of the Deadpool trilogy. I think we'll get to that. We'll get to the other movies in a bit, but I think Deadpool 2 is my personal favorite. And I think this is the weakest. I remember going in, I was feeling a bit sort of cynical in it because it felt just a lot of just key jangling of just nostalgia things, like we're getting Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine, we're bringing a bunch of the X-Men people in, and I remember going in thinking this is just going to be a nostalgia fest with not really any little substance in it. But I was surprised because there was actually quite a bit of substance in it. I think viewing it as a farewell to the Fox sort of Marvel universe is probably the way to go. I think it's very sweet in how it's basically a goodbye to this era. Like, of course, the main emblematic bit of that is the fact that, you got all these Fox, or really just other ones like Blade and stuff, because Blade wasn't made by Fox. That was made by, I think, Sony or something, or New Line Cinema. I can't remember. But you got all these pre-MCU versions of these characters that period from all these other movies that some were successful, some were not, and stuff. So, and so you see all these characters, as well as, of course, the credits scene. The credits just being footage of all the behind the scenes of the making of those movies and stuff. So I think it is quite sweet in that it's basically that, and rather than not like what I was expecting it to be, where it's just Deadpool just kills off the Fox Marvel universe. So I think it's interesting to have it be a meta sort of thing where, the TVA is sort of the one to kill it. And you can sort of view it especially as well as, of course, it being like an allegory for the Disney Fox buying thing, where it's like, you could argue like the TVA is Disney taking over from Fox and stopping all their projects and cancelling them in order to make this new universe. So you can kind of see the metatextualness in the story for that. So I think that's sort of all good. I also don't think this ruins the ending of Logan, because it's another universe as Wolverine that just has a very similar timeline to the Fox timelines of Logan, of Wolverine. So I don't think it actually messes it up, and that whole opening scene I think is fine. I think where it sort of stumbles a bit is when it actually tries to give Wade some development. I think it is interesting that they do try to give him something where he's like feels so lost now, like he just feels so empty, and like where he's like he feel like he doesn't matter anymore. I think it's kind of interesting. The problem is I don't think it's like it doesn't go into a whole lot of depth of that. I feel it kind of subsides a bit. It doesn't go fully sort of into depth in with that. It sort of loses sort of a bit of focus, and like it sort of really only pops up at the beginning and then towards the end, I think. But I think it's still a really good fun time, even if a lot of it does feel a bit like it's just hype and Aurora moments. Like, so yeah, I think it's still good. I think it's good, but it's definitely my least favorite of the Deadpool trilogy, personally. Then we move on to Thunderbolts, aka the New Avengers. I didn't see this in cinemas. I kind of missed it because by this point I was like, I won't go and see every MCU movie in the cinema. I kind of missed seeing this one, and I'm shame I did, because this turned out actually pretty damn great. Like, who knew this movie would actually be really damn good? Because everything in the marketing, as well as just the character lineup, just made me think, yeah, nah, I'm not interested to see that. But then I watched it when it came onto Disney Plus, and I was like, wow, that's great. So much so, even visually, it looked great. So I picked up the 4K release of it. So yeah, I think I was very much surprised by this. I think this is a great film. I think bringing all these like B-list like MCU characters together to form, of course, the Thunderbolt, who basically are all brought together by this one woman in order to have them all double cross each other, but instead decide to team up to take her down. I think is great. Of course, I think the main thing that makes this movie a success is Bob, aka Sentry. I think he's a great adaptation of the character, even if they tweak a lot of the stuff. I think him being an allegory for depression is damn good and really impressive and unique. And having that theme follow that through all the characters, like we see pretty much all the characters are just like depressed at one point or another. I think it just it just makes the characters feel more three-dimensional, and more so when they were first introduced in their respective movies. So yeah, I think the characters are damn great, and just also the visuals as well. I mentioned before are just great. Like the whole thing of getting like voided and stuff, and seeing the void and stuff, like that is an amazing representation of like the dark side of Sentry. Just having just like the shadow look of the void is just absolutely crazy. It's just so unnerving and stuff, and especially like when the void just like voids just all this population, all just innocent people just get like turned to shadows and stuff. Like it reminded me a lot with that scene in Iron Man 3 when him and the kid go to the place where one of the extremist people blew himself up, and you see there's like some shadows sort of on the walls there. It reminded me of this. Yeah, I think this movie is just damn great, and really sort of the start of what could be the MCU's renaissance, because after this, like at the moment as we're recording, this is right around when Born Again is coming out. Like we could have a hat trick on our hands, because this, Fantastic Four, Wonder Man, Daredevil Born Again Season 2, and then Spider-Man Brand New Day all look very promising, or have turned out to be actually really damn good. So we could actually be back. Doomsday is the only thing I'm a bit worried about, but I think for the moment, I think we are in a surprisingly happy place, and probably the best place we've been since Phase 3 of the MCU. So yeah, Thunderbolts, great movie, really surprising, and looking forward to how they're used, especially in Doomsday, as the government sort of run sort of Avengers. So yeah. Then moving on, we have the latest MCU movie, Fantastic Four First Steps. This might actually be in my top 5 MCU movies. That might be a hot take, because I think the general consensus was this was the best Fantastic Four movie we've gotten, but it's like people regard it as like a good movie, like a standard 7 out of 10, and I could see that. But man, this was amazing. When I went into this and then I watched it, it just felt beautiful. Like this, I think the reason why I think I love this so much is this feels the most accurate MCU film really to the comic books. Even though there's still a bunch of changes they made, just the aesthetic, the vibe, and most of the characters feel almost straightly ripped from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's comics. This just feels like Herald of Galactus was just put on the screen. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. I think the visual look of the movie looks astounding. I think that scene of Silver Surfer chasing the Fantastic Four's rocket ship through near the black hole looked extraordinary, and just like so visually impressive. Be like, I can't believe this is an MCU movie that looks this good. I think also just like the 60s sort of look, of course, this being set in a different universe. It's got that 60s retro look to it, which
fits so damn well, since of course the Fantastic Four was made in the 60s, and so I think that tone, I think it's great. I think it also harkens back to that sort of theme, that sort of era in terms of like the population and stuff, where everyone has to work together in order to save the world. I think that's absolutely great, with and feels very much like a callback to Golden Age comics in itself. And I think, yeah, Galactus, he's not just a giant cloud this time. He's an actual big talking purple guy. Like that first scene when they go to his domain and just you see the scale of this guy, and it's like, holy moly, he is massive. Of course, he does shrink himself down in the final act because, of course, you need him to be moderate size so the Fantastic Four can actually fight him. So, understandable, but regardless, I think Galactus is superbly done here, and he looks visually damn good, mainly because I believe they made a full practical Galactus suit. So, but yeah, this movie, I could talk about it a long day. I really do enjoy the Fantastic Four. I only recently, like in terms of like maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, started to read into their comics a bit. But they quickly became like one of my favorite sort of team, like probably my favorite MCU Marvel team, and this movie I think excelled at it. I think all the cast do a great damn job. Pedro Pascal, I was a bit shaky on when they first announced it, but after watching the movie, I was completely sold on it. I think he sells Reed well, where, you know, he's got that type of same sort of character as Tony Stark, as Howard Stark, Tony Stark's dad, where he's this massive genius who doesn't quite get how sort of humans kind of work a bit, but he tries his damn best. He also, you know, he always feels just so guilt over all these decisions he has to make, and I think that great sort of argument between him and Sue, where she knows he has considered the option of giving Franklin over to Galactus, and Reed reassuring her that like he would never actually do it, is fantastic and a great symbol of who Reed and Sue are. I think Joseph Quinn is great as Johnny, and it's so damn refreshing to see Johnny actually be smart and actually do something helpful, like with him where he decodes Silver Surfer's broadcast. And then, of course, you got Ben, the Thing, who is just, I mean, he's the heart and holds the family together, and I think he is delivered great. And I think the CG looks surprisingly really well for him, and as well as getting, you know, his backstory, you know, with him with the school teacher, which is interesting that they didn't make him Alison Masters, you know, the blind girl who becomes his wife in the comics. But I think my reason why they did that is because since the Fantastic Four this Fantastic Four is probably going to be brought over to the main MCU, they don't want to introduce his longtime girlfriend yet, because she would be from that universe rather than the MCU universe. So I imagine when we get to the main universe, if we do get another movie, we'll probably see her over there. So I think that's probably why they decided not to make her Alicia Masters, even though in all essence she really is, basically. So yeah, of course, as well, we got some great sort of like obscure Fantastic Four characters like Mole Man, although he's not really obscure. He's one of their most probably known villains if you read the comics. But I think, yeah, Mole Man is great. You've also got some great references to both Fantastic Four as well as Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Like, of course, you've got the scene at the beginning with the montage showing the Fantastic Four fighting that big monster, which is a recreation of the first ever cover of the first ever Fantastic Four issue. You've also got a great shot of these two guys staring out a window with like sort of comic book pages on their walls, and that's supposed to be a reference to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. I think it's great. And of course, in the credits revealing the naming of the Earth that this takes place on is named after, I think, Jack Kirby's birthday, is so sweet and just so just you can feel the passion for this movie. Like director, I think Matt Shackman, I believe his name is, the passion he had for the Fantastic Four. Like this movie felt like the people who were making this really actually loved the Fantastic Four. So yeah, I think the final act, I think people have accused it of being standard MCU bog standard final fight, especially the visual look gets a bit grayer. And I can kind of see that, but I personally think it still works really damn well. And I think also the scene where Sue seemingly dies and then Franklin revives her can be argued a bit eye rolling, but I think it's cool because because I view it as to be done to show what Franklin's power is and just how powerful this guy is. So I think this movie is just so damn good and just and like I might be overselling it. I think a lot of people will probably watch this movie and think it's okay. It's a bog standard fun Fantastic Four film, but as someone who has read the comics and stuff, I think they knocked it out of the park, and I just really damn love this movie. So much so that this was my favorite movie last year, which I don't think quality wise it is. I think there were other movies that came out that I watched that are quality, like objectively if you view it that way, quality wise as better than this movie. But this movie was the one that I was just gobsmacked by how damn good it was. So much so I even personally preferred it over Superman. So, but that's just me. I think Superman is probably a better movie, like I said, with just all the other movies that came out this year. But this was the movie that was just that resonated with me the most and just was so damn special. So yeah, Fantastic Four First Steps, absolutely phenomenal. Had to get it in 4K. Looking forward to checking how this looks out, especially with the black hole scene, because man, that looks so visually gorgeous. So yeah, Fantastic Four, phenomenal.
Then moving on, here we have the only MCU TV show I've got on Blu-ray, which is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1. This is my favourite comic book show. I really love this show. I think it's criminally underrated. This is, of course, the first ever live-action MCU TV show that was made, and very much does feel like it belongs in the realm of traditional, TV sort of drama like this. When first watching this, you can feel it's very much budgeted type TV drama at the time. So, but I think this show just evolved into just such a damn good show that just like every season just had me just love it even more. So I first watched this when it sort of came out. I think I watched I think it was one episode that was airing one night, and I watched it. I was like, I really enjoy this. And so when the season ended, I ended up watching this whole season back to back and just really liking it. However, this season is easily the weakest, and the reason why a lot of people just gave up on it so early on, because for the first 15 episodes of this show, it's like a case of the week thing with a team of analysts, crime analysts, except it's S.H.I.E.L.D. So it's like they find all these quirky bits of tech or quirky villains and stuff, and have to have to take them out. So it's just that and that week after week after week, and I think that is what really killed a lot of people's interest in this, because it's just nothing really that new, and the characters aren't that well developed and stuff. So I think I understand why a lot of people just gave up on this show quite early on in this season, because this is the weakest. However, once it gets to episode 16, or maybe I would argue maybe episode 13, it just becomes a whole different show, and you can see why, because spoiler alert for this show, as well as Captain America Winter Soldier, which I already spoiled before, but basically the reveal is that Hydra, of course, has been in S.H.I.E.L.D., and so when you watch it, that gets brought in where we deal on the ground with Phil Coulson's team reacting to the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been compromised by Hydra. You then realize that the reason why the previous episodes were like that was because they had to wait and bide their time before Captain America Winter Soldier came out, so they wouldn't spoil the twist. So they needed to have that so
that all the Hydra stuff would happen in like the last few episodes of the season. And so it's understandable why it went in that. But once it does get there, it's just so damn good. Just like it just goes so damn well with the paranoia of those last few episodes, with they don't know who they can trust. I think it just does it so well, because at the same time as it's spending 15 episodes like even just doing other waffly stuff, they've been slowly building the characters a bit to, even though at the start, like for the first few episodes, they're just very generic and stuff. As those episodes go on, you get sort of different sort of plot beats until you get to the Hydra stuff when everything just gets flipped on its head. Like, what I'm mainly talking about, of course, is Ward. Like, Ward it's such a genius sort of thing in terms of a character. Like, the reveal that, like, Ward has been Hydra this whole time is just so damn, just absolutely shocking. And that scene where, like, he just kills Victoria Hand is just like, oh, man. Like, what the hell is going on? It's like, oof, it's like so damn devastating and just absolutely crazy, because I think it's so damn good, because for the whole of this first season, Ward is like the most generic character. Like he's just the standard action hero. He has a bit of sort of backstory of how his brother used to bully him and stuff. And like it's just very, very like basic surface level. And he's just got not that much character to him. And then we find out there's a reason for that, because everything we've been told about his life is pretty much a lie. Like, because he was brought into Hydra specifically and worked within S.H.I.E.L.D. And this whole time he's been secretly a Hydra agent. And I think having that false illusion to like making this character seem just utterly generic as possible is so good, because you realize that's just a cover for who he really is. And once Ward's revealed as Hydra, the character going forward becomes like the most ultra fascinating character and such. So, but yeah, I think this show is just damn great, but this first season is for the most part the weakest. But I think when it actually locks in with S.H.I.E.L.D. being infiltrated by Hydra, it becomes like the best thing ever. I think it just works so damn well. So yeah, if you want to watch it, check it out. Just bear through the first like couple episodes, which I know is a bit of a higher order, considering this is like a 22 episode season, because we used to get those back then. And it really starts to get good at episode 60 or 70. Although I personally think it starts to get really interesting at episode 13, when they have to board the train, where they have to stop like cybertech on the train, because the ending of that is pretty damn shocking. So I think everything up to episode 13 is whiffly waffly meh, but I think from episode 13 onwards it's great. So I think so if you have the chance, bear through it. The last like couple episodes are just so damn worth it. So yeah. So then we moved on to season 2. So this is when the show really focuses up and evolves itself into something else. So basically now, of course, this is basically all about now that since Hydra was revealed to the world as being inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and S.H.I.E.L.D. basically collapsing. Phil's team is now running S.H.I.E.L.D. and basically S.H.I.E.L.D. is now going underground, essentially going into the shadows, just being like no government authority, just with no sanctions or anything, just going dark and having a secret base and stuff. So this is sort of when it really focuses up. So this, of course, starts to develop the character Skye, who's like supposed to be the protagonist of the first season, with her being the main protagonist, who's this hacker girl who's basically, her long story arc is trying to find her parents and stuff, because she was raised as an orphan. So this season is the focus of that, where she meets her parents and we get into her backstory and who she really is. And so I think this season is great, because this definitely is, it feels so focused this season. Like right from the get-go, they know what they want to do and how they're going to achieve that, and I think they do it pretty damn well. So this sort of season is split in sort of 2 halves. The first half is all about this like map of something, which is a map that Phil Coulson has just been drawing, just because of the whole thing with the fact that we found out in the show. We found out in the first season that
the reason why Phil was alive was because Nick Fury specifically ordered him to be resurrected using special Kree blood, which was like the blood from the body of a dead Kree person. And basically his resurrection was so traumatic that they wiped it as part of a project that he initiated before called Project Tahiti. And so he has no memory of that, but he eventually all found it out by the end of the season. But after everything was said and done, suddenly he just had the urge just to carve these weird sort of symbols into anything. And as we find out at the end of the first half, it's a map to a city, which underground city. And so basically the first half is them trying to find that. At the same time, Hydra's trying to find it, where basically since now Hydra has now been exposed, they can emerge out of the shadows and be public, even though, they're bad. But but you see like Hydra just being like a full public force now, which is very interesting to see. And so basically, they're trying to get the obelisk, which is the device that we find out is inside that hidden city. And as we find out, it's actually what is the creation for Inhumans, which was basically the big thing that this show started, where they basically gave the MCU their version of the mutants, doing the mutants. So they basically made them Inhumans, where it's basically the Inhumans, of course, in the comics. But we don't have the actual Inhumans like Royal Family with like Black Bolt and Medusa stuff. We have none of that. We just have the Terrigen mists, I think from memory is what they're called, which is what they used, which are inside the obelisks. And basically it's like you crack these crystals, and depending if you have the gene in you, you will either get powers or you'll get turned to stone and die. So, and as we find out, Skye actually has that gene. This, of course, also introduces her dad, who's played by I can't remember his name. It's something, but he's the main character in Twin Peaks, and he also plays Hank in Fallout. But this was the first thing I saw him in, and I think he's great. Just this absolutely crazy guy who is just so dedicated to finding his daughter that he doesn't, once he meets her, you can tell she's just terrified of him. And then when you get the backstory of all what was happening, like when her mum was taken, her dad gave Skye to some trusted people in the village, and then the village ended up giving the baby to Hydra. And then when her father came out, you find out he somehow ripped the entire village apart. Like, he went through and just massacred everyone with his bare hands and stuff. And so you find out eventually he used these special drugs that gave him super strength and became absolutely crazy and stuff. So, but anyway, so that's the first sort of half of that season. The second season is all to do with the Inhumans themselves, because you find out Skye's mum was actually an Inhuman, and you find out she actually has been alive this whole time, and she's been running a big Inhuman sort of colony hidden from the world and stuff. And so basically it's all it's very similar to in the X-Men comics, with the most recent ones with Krakoa. I think that's the island's name, the island where all mutant, where it's a mutant safe haven and stuff. Basically it's the same sort of thing, and it deals with the similar themes where S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to have the same sort of relation, and wants to have relations with the Inhumans and stuff, but it all goes, of course, out of control and stuff. This also, in the second half, has this whole sort of story arc about the real S.H.I.E.L.D., which I think is a bit weak, where it's basically you find out there's another group of survivors from Winter Soldier who vow to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. And so there's this whole thing where Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D. and another faction of S.H.I.E.L.D. are at odds with each other, and I think that's probably the weakest thing of this season. I think it doesn't bring too much, and it gets all resolved by the fact that the other S.H.I.E.L.D. realizes Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s the more official one and just merges it all together. So, but yeah, long story short, season 2 is a lot better. I think it focuses itself so much more, and I think it provides just a formation for a great damn TV show. Then we move on to season 3, which I think is, this show just keeps getting better and better. I think season 3 is damn good. I think it's, this whole season's all about the very first Inhuman with Hive, I believe his name is, and it goes into the history of like Hydra even before World War II. I think that's just really fascinating. We get the whole lore of like this planet Maveth, which is where it seemingly comes from. We get some really just great storylines here. Like, I think the first half is mainly about sort of the last sort of basically them trying to take out Ward. Basically, like by this point, Ward has like joined Hydra, but then has left after it all fell apart. And now he's rebuilding Hydra in his way and stuff. So the first half of season 3 is really basically a lot mainly of trying to get Ward and stuff, as well as also the first few episodes deal with the previous cliffhanger where Gemma was taken by the big monolith thing and sent to Maveth and stuff, which is really, really interesting and really, really cool. And that episode as well, where she's just on Maveth on her own, is damn good. I think it's just a great episode. And then the second half is when, of course, because it has that mid-season finale, which is so damn awesome, where Phil Coulson just skydives down the castle and into the portal and then lands on Maveth and then finally gets his taste for revenge and kills Ward. That's just an awesome mid-season finale. After that, basically, after Ward dies, we then have Hive, the Inhuman, actually possess Ward's body, and basically for the rest of that season it's all about trying to stop Hive and stuff. So yeah, season 3 is damn good. This also introduces the Secret Warriors, where Sky, now going as Daisy, her birth name, is, of course, I forgot to mention, is she becomes Quake, which is Daisy Johnson is a character in the comics who has like earthquake type powers and stuff. So last season was when she got her powers, and now she's operating as Quake and stuff. So this has the Secret Warriors, where basically at the end of last season there was like a big sort of outbreak of Terrigen crystals into like fish oil, I think from memory, which caused a lot of people just to get powers. So this starts like the whole Inhuman sort of epidemic where a lot of people become Inhuman, and it's basically exactly sort of the status quo with the mutants in the regular Marvel universe, where just random people just become mutants and stuff and things like that. So it's basically the sort of same idea. So it's basically, yeah, as I said before, the MCU's sort of take on the mutants and stuff. And it's a shame because it's never referenced at all in any of the movies. But yeah, season 3, absolutely great. Some fantastic episodes, and just really cool the way how it just evolves into this big space type epic about preventing like the first Inhuman from just like committing like mass genocide. So yeah, great season. Then we have season 4, which is the best season of this show. It is so damn good. This season, to be honest, rivals some of the best MCU or just no comic book show seasons. I think this is on foot with some of Daredevil's seasons, I think, personally. That might be a massive hot take, but this season is incredible. This season is actually split up into various story arcs, which I think this is the best way to structure, I think, a 22 type episode season, where the season split into 3 story arcs, or 3 pods, I believe they called it back then. So the first couple of episodes, like episode 1 to 7, focuses on Ghost Rider. Like this introduces Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes, the second Ghost Rider, and it's just so damn good. Just like the portrayal of Ghost Rider in this is fantastic. The look is great. I'm so surprised that they managed to make Ghost Rider look this good. And it sucks that the reason why he was only in like the first 7 episodes and only appeared again in the finale was because the budget wasn't there to have him be there all the time. But when he was on screen, he was awesome. And I think the story arc for his character, for the Ghost Rider type story arc, is pretty good, but I think it's the weakest, personally, of the 3 story arc, with his dad and like the others using the Darkhold and stuff, which is another crazy thing when I watched this. And then when I watched Multiverse of Madness, because that has the Darkhold, or I think it's WandaVision also has the Darkhold in it. I can't remember, but I remember I was like, that's from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And even though it looks completely different, because of course, as this show went on, the connections to the MCU got looser and looser to the point where the movies just did not acknowledge this show at all. It's understandable why they look so different, but I remember, when I watched Multiverse of Madness, like, the Darkhold, that's from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I think that first arc is sort of the weakest. The next arc is the LMD arc, which is all about the main threat of Ada, who's basically Ultron 2.0, essentially, but she's a much better version of Ultron. I think she's the best. I think she's the best villain of this entire show. When you watch it, you'll probably understand why. This is all about, like the creation of the LMDs, where they're basically essentially robot versions of Skrulls who can replicate themselves, and that leads into one of the best episodes of television, Self-Control, I think it's called, which is a fantastic episode that I won't spoil, but just to give you the idea, it's basically what Secret Invasion should have been. It's Secret Invasion, but done good, except it's robots rather than Skrulls. Like, the paranoia and everything is there. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And that leads into the final and best story arc of this entire show, which is the Framework arc, which is basically an alternate universe where a simulation where Hydra rules the world and controls everything rather than S.H.I.E.L.D. And there's a lot of just really cool stuff and fascinating character insights that happen in this story arc. So season 4 is the best this show gets, and one of the greatest seasons of comic book television I've ever seen, and up there with things like Daredevil. I think Daredevil's sort of regarded as the best live action sort of comic book show in itself. So, but I can't think of others off the top of my head, but it's in that ball category. It's just that good. So really just watch this whole show for season 4 alone, because it is just so damn phenomenal. Then we move on to season 5, what was originally going to be the final season, because it was supposed to, there was like a lot of it was building it to be the end, because I don't think they were going to get renewed to the point where the last episode of this season is just called the end. But I think it definitely works as a potential end for the show. I think it's not as good as season 4, but I think it's still great. The first half of this season is all about the team being sent to the future, where basically the Earth has been destroyed, and now the last remnants of humanity are under the control of the Kree, because they desperately need help and resources from them. So in turn, they basically just become slaves or second-class citizens to the Kree. And I think it starts off a bit slow, but I think once we get to the mid-season finale, I think it really does. Towards the mid-season finale, it really picks up. Then the second half is them going back to Earth and basically trying to stop what happened in that future with the Earth getting cracked apart. And I think that second half is probably the weakest of those two. I think it does just spin its wheels a tiny bit at times. I think there's an interesting sort of insight with Hydra. Of course, with Hydra, they always come back with their whole motto, of course, being cut off one head, 2 more shall take its place. So Hydra's back in this, but it's very interesting. It's very interestingly done, because it's like it's following a new type of Hydra that we haven't seen before. Led by someone who who didn't subscribe to a lot of the standard the Nazi ideals, or just like the Hydra ideas. So it is quite interesting there. And then, of course, the finale pretty much takes place at the same time as Infinity War, which is like the last direct connection this show has to the MCU, and what causes a lot of people to believe this show is now no longer non-canon, because after this, there's no mention of the snap or anything. So a lot of people find it hard to believe that this show remained in the MCU by the end. But the thing I really love about this season is in the second half, we get this really really interesting character journey for Glenn Talbot. And Glenn Talbot is such a great character. He's basically a side character for most of the show. He starts off as this military guy who's trying to hunt for the S.H.I.E.L.D. team, because after everything that happens in Winter Soldier and stuff, basically all of S.H.I.E.L.D. is now wanted. So basically he leads a team to find Coulson's team and stuff. And basically throughout the show, Coulson and him become sort of allies and stuff. And his performance and look, and also kind of his character a bit, this feels so weird to compare to, but he's very much like J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man, where he's this guy who hates S.H.I.E.L.D. and at first, but as he comes to understand them a bit more and is forced to work with them a couple of times, he realizes they're actually a good team and that Phil's a good guy and stuff, to the point where you get to season 5 where he gets captured by Hydra and basically is brainwashed into basically becoming Gravitron Gravitron, I think that's his name, and believing he should be like a superhero and stuff. And I think it's tragic because then his whole sense of perception gets warped and his morality gets warped to the point where he becomes a bad guy, and it's really sad because Daisy has to take him out and stuff. But the reason why I compare him so much to J. Jonah Jameson is because he's got that same thing, that same sort of character arc, especially really in the comics, where Jonah absolutely despises Spider-Man at first, but as time goes along, he becomes to respect him more and more, to the point where he values him as a true friend in the comics. And it's the same thing with Glenn Talbot. And so, yeah, I think that's really cool, and just really, really tragic, because this guy we've been following for like 4 seasons, and by this point we actually really like, and he's good mates with Phil Coulson and stuff. And it's like really sad because he becomes a bad guy at the end because he gets consumed. He's brainwashed to the point where he's so broken that he injects himself with this gravitron and gravitonium and just becomes just like this crazy guy, this crazy like superhero. So this season is great. I think it's a great potential final season, even though it wasn't the final season. Of course, this also basically is the last season with the real Phil Coulson. It's very sad at the end it's so well done, the way they essentially kill him off. Basically, the way they kill him off is we don't ever see it on screen. We just know between season 5 and season 6, Phil settled down, and then one day he just died. I think it's fantastically written and a great end to the character itself. So yeah, season 5, a great potential finale, but still a great season, since we got 2 more seasons after this. Although really it's the final one for here now, because unfortunately season 6 and season 7 never got a Blu-ray release. I think they only got released in Japan, and those are like ridiculously expensive. So for now, I'm just gonna have my 5 seasons here on Blu-ray. Hopeful that they might release season 6 and 7, but considering it's Disney, I doubt it. So they've probably forgotten most about this show anyway, because this has not been referenced in any MCU show or movie since, which sucks so much, because for the longest time, I think this was the best thing that was coming out of the MCU, personally. That's probably a very hot take, but man, so even though I've spoiled a lot of this, go check it out. I think it's one of the best. It's one of the best comic book shows of all time, and it's my personal favorite. It's just such a damn good series. So that comes to the end of another part in the 4K Blu-ray and DVD collection. So next time, like I said at the start of this video, it will be the other part of my Marvel collection. So this will be everything else in the next part will be all non-MCU stuff. So like all the other Spider-Man films, the X-Men films, as well as some animated shows and movies and stuff. So yeah, look forward to that, and I'll see you next time.